When the USS Maine exploded and sank under mysterious circumstances in Havana Harbor on February 15, 1898, it served as the ignition point for the Spanish-American War. The sunken ship became a rallying point of remembrance, much like the Alamo, and the phrase "Remember the Maine, to hell with Spain" became a popular phrase as America prepared for war. The desire to avenge the vessel and honor its memory was only bolstered by America's swift victory in the conflict. The wreck of the Maine was in shallow water. In fact, the mast remained visible, poking above the surface after being sunk. The remains of the ship were a hazard to traffic in and out of the harbor, and many in the United States wanted to give her a more dignified reburial out at sea. In 1910, 12 years after she sank, Congress authorized the funds to raise her and tow her out into the ocean to be resunk. The remains of crew members recovered from the wreck would also be repatriated for burial in the U.S. The Army Corps of Engineers built a cofferdam around the wreck and pumped out the water. Photographers for the project were able to capture an incredibly rare sight of a shipwreck with all of the water removed. The site was documented and the remains of the ship were outfitted so that it could be refloated. 66 bodies were recovered. One could be identified, and his remains were sent home to his family for burial. The remainder was sent to Arlington National Cemetery, where many of the 261 crew members killed in the explosion were already buried. While the wreck was exposed, some of the ship's fittings and items from on board were removed as memorial souvenirs to send back to veterans and others who had requested them in the States. With the wreck's hull prepared, the cofferdam was refilled with water, and on March 16, 1912, the refloated Maine was towed 4 miles from the coast of Cuba, adorned with flowers and an American flag as a crowd of thousands watched. The hull was opened to the water, and she was honorably sunk as taps played and a 21-gun salute was given from the U.S. Navy ships who had towed her. The relics collected from the wreck were sent to veterans' halls, museums, and institutions that could incorporate them into memorials, as well as to members of Congress and the Senate who requested them for their constituents. The ship's mast and bell were sent to Arlington National Cemetery, where they were set up to watch over the section of graves for the Maine's crew, where it remains today. But the strangest item taken was the bathtub from the personal quarters of the ship's captain, Charles Dwight Sigsbee. Ohio Congressman Frank B. Willis had wanted it to donate to his hometown of Urbana. When it arrived, citizens of Urbana were befuddled. They had wanted one of the ship's cannons, or at least an artillery shell. Some of the town's ladies said it was disgusting and not worthy as a piece of war memorabilia. It served as a trough for horses for a time before being moved to the mayor of Urbana's chicken coop, where chickens roosted and warmed themselves during the cooler months. Nearby Findlay, Ohio, saw an opportunity and offered to take the bathtub off of Urbana's hands if they didn't want it. Congressman Willis managed to work with the U.S. Naval Department to finally get Urbana their artillery shell, which made them more willing to give up the bathtub. And so, on March 13, 1913, the bathtub arrived in Findlay, along with a bill of $4.63 to cover the cost of shipping. The people of Findlay were a little taken aback to see that their new prize was exactly what it was, a bathtub from a ship that had exploded and had spent 14 years underwater. It was rusted and most of the enamel had worn away and chipped off. One local newspaper said bluntly, "No one knows what to do with it." The bathtub was placed in the town's main municipal building, but found use that winter when the police, lacking a bin for the patrol room's coal, requisitioned the bathtub for the job. There was an outcry from local historians who decried what they considered the disrespectful treatment of the artifact, and the local group of Spanish-American War veterans offered to pay to have the tub bronzed for a proper public display in the park. But in 1915 it was moved to the courthouse and placed in a display case, but it was unlabeled. The building's janitor, a man named Joe Swab, became so tired of answering visitors' questions about what it was that he created a label for it himself. After 15 years in the courthouse, it was moved to the rotunda and finally given some measure of respect. It was draped in the flag that the soldiers of Findlay had carried into battle during the war, and there it stayed for the next 30 years. When the courthouse was renovated in 1960, it was given to the Findlay College Museum, who shuffled it around various storage locations out of the public's eye. In 1974, it moved again to the Hancock Historical Museum, who would keep it in the basement much of the time, but occasionally displayed it on their porch. Finally, in the 1990s, the bathtub was given its own permanent display in the museum, labeled and placed alongside an enlarged version of a commemorative stamp of the USS Maine, donated by the Postal Service for the centenary of the ship's sinking. The bathtub remains a popular attraction for local school children of Findlay who come to see their town's very unique piece of history.